The 2023 preseason is in the books. Welcome, fans, to the actual show. The 2023 NFL season is about to begin. Welcome to the Ravens Talk Podcast. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku. We've got a big day for you guys today. We'll have Brian McFarland from Russel Street Report join us to talk about the Ravens cap and the players that have joined the team and a couple of cuts that may or may not be surprising. We'll also have former first-round draft pick Mark Clayton joining the show to talk all about his interests as far as what he went through as far as being the first-round draft pick and making his way throughout the NFL. But first, we're going to get started. We're bringing right on Brian McFarland with Russel Street Report, the big cap guy, the one guy that I count on to get all of my numbers and figures correct as far as the Ravens cap is concerned. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, the season's over. At least preseason is. We got a good look at some rookies that the Ravens drafted and some undrafted rookies that have made an impact. And now for what's, pretty much all said and done, we have ourselves a roster heading into the new season. What are your thoughts about the preseason, how it went? Any players that surprised you or any players that really you expected to show up but didn't?
Well, it was a little hard to say because obviously a lot of the big names weren't playing. So it would have been nice to see that. Now, obviously, that's the trend. Although I was surprised Mahomes played a lot in Kansas City. Josh Allen played in the third game. So I was kind of surprised by that. But the Ravens obviously a little snake bit with that over the last couple of years, especially the J.K. Dobbins injury. So they're playing it safe and hopefully they'll be able to hit the ground running. So there weren't a lot of, even some of the tweener guys, we didn't get to see a lot of. I was happy with Kevon Seymour. I thought he looked good, solid. Obviously they weren't playing any of their top three corners weren't playing at all. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's a situation that's going to have to play out a little bit. Some of the younger guys that got cut, but some of the younger edges didn't look so bad. They didn't get to the quarterback, but, so they're practice squad type guys, Ham for one. Offensive line was a little up and down. Mustafar got cut today. Looked like I thought he had a really good preseason. I didn't think he was going to be in the mix. Really, I thought he was just kind of a camp guy when they signed him because they didn't sign him to July or maybe even August.
Yeah, I think they signed him. July. Yeah.
Yeah. So I wasn't expecting much. I mean, I obviously they have a backup center if you want to consider Makari that, but you're also spreading him thin if he's practicing here, there, and everywhere. So hopefully they can get Mustafar back on the practice squad. So they'll have that flexibility. But it was preseason. I'm glad the winning streak is over. I don't think they made that big of a deal out of it. Nationally, they made a bigger deal out of it. And I think most Ravens fans found it pretty much amusing, to be honest with you.
Yeah, for sure. The third preseason game, it kind of felt kind of lackadaisical, and that's a credit to really what they did with the streak. This third game, I was pretty much out of it. I was looking to see if one or two guys made an impact, but for the most part, my heart wasn't in it. The streak is over. That means my interest is done. So kudos to Harbaugh for getting me interested in preseason football for the first time in a long time. But you mentioned there's a lot of players who didn't play, and that's really a testament to how well the roster was built even prior to this season. They added some pieces, especially at wide receiver. But for the most part, who you saw last year is who you're going to pretty much see this year, save for a few additions. I wanted to bring up one thing because we had a guest, Ken McCusick. I'm not sure if you're familiar, film study
Ken,
Ravens.
well, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He brought up the Odell Beckham signing. And I know this signing is a few months removed, but I definitely wanted to talk about it because it might reap some benefits or maybe pay some dividends in the other way if the cap doesn't go the way people hope. So OBJ signed a big contract, $15, $18 million 1 year deal. Even though it wasn't much of a cap hit this year, I think there's some potential to hit the cap next year as well. What do you think about this signing? Do you think that it was abnormal? The Ravens have brought in veteran receivers in the past, Steve Smith and Quan Bolden, and the cap hit, or I guess you could say the deal that was sprung for OBJ wasn't the likes of which we've seen for some time for the Ravens. What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I mean, one, obviously, it was, I think the most per year they've ever spent on a receiver was Crabtree, and it was about $8 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, he didn't even finish the contract. I think he was here. If it was here 2 years, he was definitely here for one, but I'm not even sure he was here for two. So obviously, $15 million 1 year, $15 million is a big number. And then the other thing that, and they did this for 6 contracts this year, was using void years.
Yeah.
Now, void years, I know they became a big wave in 2000 and 2001, but that was because the cap went down so substantially in the COVID year. Mm-hmm. And even 2001, teams were still trying to dig out from under. I mean, I think in 2001, and even now, we're still probably 30 million under where the cap would have been had there not been COVID. So, a lot of teams, you're planning your cap out for a while, and you weren't expecting, a $30 million drop in the COVID year. And so teams started using void years. I don't think it wasn't anything newfangled. Oh my God, we're so progressive kind of thing. It was necessity. And to be honest with you, most of the teams that had used them in the past were using them, the Saints being the big proponents of them. And I don't think it was, again, because they were something newfangled and something they discovered. It was because they had to. I mean, they were trying to, to extend the Drew Brees years for as long as they could. It didn't work out. And then they were trying to just put together a roster that was, in that before Brady got in Tampa, at least in that poor division.
Right.
And they thought they could get to the playoffs at 8-8, I guess, back then, because it was only 16 games then. Right. So it's not something I think is a great thing to use. And the reason being, and we use Beckham as the example, if he is not re-signed next year, there's going to be $11 million in dead money on the cap under his name. So what they did is, they signed him to $15 million. His base salary is a little over $1 million, and they gave him a almost $14 million bonus, which is prorated over 5 years. So that first proration counts this year, which keeps, plus the $1 million base salary, keeps his cap number pretty low. But you've got 11 million worth of cap dollars that have to hit, and it's spread out over 5 years. But when the contract voids next year, automatically, if he's not re-signed before the beginning of the league year, that whole 11 accelerates into 2024. And they did this with not just Beckham, but they did it with Geno Stone, Gus Edwards, and several others. So unfortunately, there will be I think it's like 23 million in debt. If none of those 6 are re-signed next year, there's going to be 23 million in dead money on the cap next year. Now, a lot of Ravens fans have been, let's go for it. We need to go for it. We need to be the Rams. Win a Super Bowl doesn't matter. You say that until you hit a rough patch afterward. And the Super Bowl is great. Don't get me wrong. Obviously, we've had 2 of them. It's been fantastic. But if you don't get there, if you fall just 1 yard short in the Super Bowl and lose, you got to pay the piper. Now, some of these guys, some of the lesser guys, and he's not going to affect the cap terribly anyway, but Geno Stone's probably a guy that will get re-signed. Yeah. Zeitler was the other big one. And he's now in the last year of his deal, and he's getting older, so I don't know. I'm surprised. I was kind of surprised they didn't extend him actually instead of using the void years. But maybe he's considering retirement or kind of playing it year to year, and they didn't want to do that. Plus, you got to keep in mind they did this before Lamar was re-signed. So that's twofold. One, they were trying to maximize their cap space in case an offer sheet came in while Lamar was still under the franchise tag. So they were trying to spread this out as much as they could and minimize everybody's impact on the 2023 cap. And then the other, I think you can make a good argument that Beckham, given that he has hardly played in the last 2 years, they may have overpaid for him, but I think that was the necessity there, because there were talks about how some of the other veteran wide receivers out there got blown out of the water, or they blew the teams out of the water because they, if Beckham gets that, I want that or more. Mm-hmm. And that kind of screwed up a lot of other teams who were trying to either sign veterans or in the case of DeAndre Hopkins, trying to get him traded. And he wanted that. He wanted Beckham money, ended up not getting it. But so I think, so that's the drawback of the void years. So I'm happy that Beckham's here. I think, he has his moments. He's a wide receiver.
Right,
they have their
exactly.
moments. They do. He's going to throw his helmet on the sideline. But from all reports, even and not just here, but from his past, he's 100% great teammate, hard worker, and with the young wide receivers, Bateman and Flowers now. I mean, I think he's a good kind of mentor there. And so for the first time in forever, I guess, we have a legit wide receiver room, barring everybody staying healthy, obviously.
Absolutely. And just to go off of what you said, because of that cap hit, do you think it's a priority if Beckham has a decent season to re-sign him to an offer?
Yeah, and I mean it's gonna depend on the money, obviously. I mean, if he goes out and puts up 1,400 yards, that's going to be hard to re-sign him, given their other constraints and given this other dead money. But he would seemingly be a priority to re-sign, because if he signs for 3 years, let's just say, then that money will continue to prorate. So that'll be roughly a little under $3 million a year in each year, plus new money, obviously.
Right.
And then in the 4th year, when that contract ends, then that 5th year is going to have to be dealt with. But that's 4 years down the road or 3 years down the road, depending on how long he plays. And by then the cap, should go, going up substantially over the next few years. So, but next year is going to be tight, unless the cap goes up substantially more than we expect. And we're already expecting it to go up about 25 million or more. Unless it goes up like 40 million, it's going to be a real tight year again, unless they, if they can re-sign Zeitler, spread that out, Geno Stone. I don't know that Gus Edwards will be back next year.
I don't think so.
I kind of have a feeling not. And I'm trying to remember, there's Rock Ya-Sin is another one who got void years. So I think that's all 6, or that's 5 of the 6. But so it's going to be a little rough next year. Now they've got restructure possibilities. Lamar, they'll probably restructure
after
first year of the contract. They always restructure, but so they'll have some avenues. But yeah, so that's the drawback to the void years. Everybody was all excited. Next year, when you look at, if it's 23 million in dead money, people are like, maybe void years weren't such a great thing.
Well, they got to win the Super Bowl then. They have to.
There you go. Exactly.
Got to get it done. Well, you talked about how tight it is the upcoming year in 2024, but this year, do you think they have some wiggle room to maybe add in a veteran or two? There were some notable names that were cut today for the other 31 teams, and maybe they get some cornerback help, or maybe even a pass rusher to help out, because David Ojabo doesn't seem to have been the player we thought he would be, at least at this stage early on in his career.
Yeah, I certainly think so. They have about 5.7 million before today's cuts, and no major names were cut. So that number shouldn't change much for the time being. Now, this is as of not this Wednesday night or midnight Wednesday, but the following, the salary cap calculation changes. Right now, it's called the Rule of 51, which is just the top 50, essentially the top 51 cap numbers on the team. You've got 90 players, or at least prior to that, you had 90 players on the roster. You can't fit them all under the cap. So I don't know who invented this rule. It's been around as long as I've been doing this, but It's called the Rule of 51, and they only count the top 51. But as of Wednesday, obviously, right off the bat, you had 52 and 53, just the 53 players on the roster. Then all the guys on IR, PUP, whatever designation, and then of course the practice squad. And the practice squad has 16 players, and that's about 4 million all by itself. So they are going to need more money. They will. With the practice squad, they're going to have to do a restructure already. I mean, unless there's some big cut that we can't imagine, but there's going to have to be a restructure anyway, because that 5.7 is not going to cover everything they need. I mean, right there, and because right now you're looking at, they cut. Let's see, they cut Urban, they cut Seymour, which seemingly are just temporary moves, because they need to put somebody on season return IR. They have to be on the roster as of now. So they can come back tomorrow. I think it's 4:00 after tomorrow. They can come back, and then the guys can go on IR at that point. So it looks like Bowser's going to stay on NFI. Mullen is on NFI, and then you've probably got at least 2 other guys going on IR. So right there, you've got your 53 plus 4 guys, plus 16 guys on the practice squad. So they're probably going to need to do a restructure. Now, they don't need to do anything today or tomorrow, but by next Wednesday at midnight, they're going to. But they've got plenty of options. They have not while they did a lot of void years, they haven't restructured any of their big contracts. Stanley, got to be careful there. They've restructured them a lot.
Yeah.
Humphrey, Andrews, they did. I think they did restructure Andrews at the end.
Yeah.
And then Lamar, Roquan. So they can they've got options there. So what I imagine they'll do a couple restructures now, create some space, and then obviously as the trade deadline approaches, if they feel there's a move to be made, they'll have something in their back pocket. They won't. I don't know if they'll do it all now. You can carry it over, granted, into next year, but it's still eating into future years as well. So you want to be careful with that. But I assume that will happen. I mean, Stanley and Humphrey are over $7 million each. They can be restructured. See the others. Lamar could be a little over 5. Roquan's about 2.7. Did I say Andrews is 4.4? So I mean, they could conceivably make 20 million, 30 million if they wanted to. Okay. But you've got to be careful with that, obviously, because they're already eating into the future a bit already. So.
Yeah, and just to actually piggyback off of what you just said, with the future, there are 2 receivers, first-round receivers, in Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers. Bateman looks to be a breakout candidate this year, and Zay Flowers, from all we've seen throughout camp and preseason, looks to be a stud himself. They have a decision to make maybe coming up in a few years where they have to decide if they want to re-sign one or both of these guys. What are your thoughts based on what you've seen so far with these 2 players? Do you think it's a possibility they re-sign both, or is it looking like one of these guys maybe a rookie contract and then hasta luego?
Yeah, well, and it's going to depend on Bateman, the kind of year he has. I mean, it's twofold. One, they have to exercise the 5th-year option on him by May of next year. So he gets this season to prove he's worth that. And let's see, so that would probably be about $14 million on its own. That'll be 2025. So he'll still be under contract next year, no matter what. Mm-hmm. But that 5th-year option will be 2025, and then they've got, I guess, 2 years to figure out Flowers. 2 years beyond that to figure out Flowers. So, obviously they traded Marquise Brown because he wasn't liking it being here, and it didn't seem like he wanted to be here. But also there were some questions whether they were going to pick up his 5th-year option. Mm-hmm. Anyway, so I don't. Both of these, I mean, I like Marquise Brown, but I didn't like him shying away from contact. I know he was a small guy and all. And I know sometimes valor, caution instead of valor, sometimes a good thing. But when you need an extra yard or 2, you want your guy to really fight for it. And didn't see a lot of that. It was solid. He's a solid player. Don't get me wrong. And if they had re-signed him, I wouldn't have been happy about it. But the other 2 seemed different. So Flowers seems to invite contact for his size, which is, that's a difference. I know people compared him to Steve Smith, and I don't know if he's got that much fire, because that's a lot of fire. But
that's the name that popped up in my head.
Certainly, but he certainly has that physicality, I guess we'll say, that Marquise seemed to lack. So they've got a little time to figure it out. Obviously, down the road, they're talking about the cap being, $300 million in a couple years. Ooh. If that's the case, because all the gambling money hasn't. The TV money's just starting to hit. The gambling money hasn't really come in yet. So, they've got some time to figure that out. I don't think it's impossible. There's certainly other teams out there that are paying top dollar to, 2 top receivers and a quarterback. So, or a top, and the tight ends aren't making as much as receivers, but top tight ends as well. But you see it happen. Kansas City traded Tyreek, right. So they traded him to Miami, so it happens where teams make a decision of this isn't, we're going to go in a different direction. But when you got all this young talent, sort of like the Orioles, you want to see it all stay around for as long as possible. So hopefully in both sports, they can figure that out.
Fingers crossed, especially for my Orioles. I need them to keep Adley Rutschman and keep Gunner. I need all my guys.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that because you did mention the gambling money hasn't come in yet. So there is a chance that the cap might be increasing, but we have these running backs. Oh boy. And who are fighting for these contracts. It looks like their value is going down as far as the market's concerned. And J.K. Dobbins is a guy who you may think deserves a contract, but because of his lack of availability over the past few seasons, you have fans thinking otherwise. Do you see a resolution coming about with them? And if so, what type of cap are we looking at as far as numbers are concerned with giving J.K. Dobbins fair money?
Yeah, I mean, he's a tough one because, as you said, I mean, he's not played a full season yet, not close to it, really, So I'm not surprised that Ravens have held the line on it. I think he needs to prove that he can be out there for 17 and hopefully more games in a season and produce. And if he does, somebody's going to pay him. I mean, it's not going to be, I don't think, I mean, you're obviously looking at Jonathan Taylor and, nobody wanted to, well, granted, that was a little different. Nobody wanted to pay the Colts price and then pay Taylor's price, I guess we'll say.
Right.
But I think that's going to be a trend that's not going to go away for a little while. Maybe there's a back out there that changes the dynamic, or a couple backs come along at the same time, or, over a couple of years and they almost their play demands to be, paid that way. But, they're going to have to be multifaceted now. And a lot of backs aren't. You've got to have to be part of the passing game. And I think now Taylor is, as we saw last year. Was that last year or 2 years ago? So, I think that's a difference. And I think Dobbins can do that. I think he's shown he can do that. It's just that we've never run screens. I mean, I've been here since '96, and
same, sir.
I don't think they've run screens very well ever. I mean, Ray Rice a little, but even with Ray Rice, very capable.
They don't run screens in Baltimore. We don't do that here. Yeah. The screens are
no. So, but Monken has a lot of screens in his playbook. I know that. So hopefully we'll see. I know they're not going to show much of that in the preseason, but hopefully that will show out. But once if he proves he's healthy, I'm not sure he's a $10 million a year player. Again, because it's just going to be proven 1 year. So maybe it's, 7 a year. I don't think anything's going to happen this year, unless he willingly takes more than he's getting, but very, very low. I mean, I don't think if they offered him a 2-year, $8 million deal, I don't think he'd take it.
No, he's not taking it.
But I think that's probably a fair number, but he doesn't want to lock him. If he does have a great year next year, then he's locked in to that $4 million next year, which, I don't think he's going to be really unhappy. You thought he was unhappy last couple of months. He's going to be really unhappy then. Yeah. I don't know. I didn't understand the strategy because I don't think they were ever going to give him more. And if they were, by staying away, I think that was less incentive for them too. Because now, I mean, he hasn't, he's only practiced a couple of weeks as opposed to 6 weeks by the time the season starts. So, I don't know. And I think his agent only has like 1 or 2 other players. I don't think his agent is very seasoned, and I'm afraid that didn't work out very well for JK.
And that's not helping that you got other running backs like Keaton Mitchell coming in, undrafted, Justice Hill.
Justice Hill's looked great.
Yeah, Justice Hill killed it this preseason. So his own teammates are his detriment. So he just needs to go out there and perform. Before I let you go, I just got to get your opinion. How do you think the Ravens are going to do this season? They look really good on paper. There's some shortcomings on the defensive side, but most of the AFC teams are like that. If you have a good quarterback and receivers, that's going to be probably your detriment as far as secondaries are concerned. What is your prediction? You think the Ravens go all the way or get close?
Well, I'm never going to. I think they have. Obviously, health is the key variable here, and as we've seen, losing Lamar at the end of the last 2 years, I think they're a Super Bowl contender. I'll never say they're going to go all the way because there's just so many variables. Let's face it, the 12 team. But for Ray Rice on 4th and 29 and Flacco to Jacoby Jones, that team probably should not have won a Super Bowl, but, we'll gladly take it and smile about it, for the rest of our lives. So, So, I mean, I think they're certainly Super Bowl contenders. I haven't looked at the schedule that closely, but I always have trouble with 17 games. So I'm still used to 16. So I'll say 12-5, which puts them, with a chance to win the division, certainly, but certainly well in the playoff mix. Obviously you get a break here or there and everybody stays healthy, and you're certainly a Super Bowl contender at that point.
Yeah, they're definitely in the conversation. I think I agree with you with your prediction. They'll be right around there making a push for that conference championship. Well, thank you so much, Brian, for joining us. You've been a great help. Tell the people where you can find your stuff.
Sure. So my articles are on Russel Street Report. I do the salary cap stuff there. And then Twitter, I'm active. When moves are happening, things will calm down for me till trade deadline, I guess. But certainly, we'll do no time soon, but we'll, do a 2024 preview later in the year or the bye week, just to get and then of course, once January and February, let's hope for like February and March, we don't have to start talking about next year in January. And that's my time, obviously, when moves are being made, good, bad, or otherwise. So, but that's where you can find me. So it's at Raven Salary Cap on Twitter, and then Russel Street Report.
Yeah, and that Twitter handle is for sure a description of what you are, because if you're a Ravens fan, you don't follow this guy, you're doing yourself a disservice. He is the one guy you go to for cap stuff. Appreciate you for coming on, Brian. I'll definitely have you on the show very soon.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Sam. Take care.
Take care. When we come back, we'll have Mark Clayton, former wide receiver for the Baltimore Ravens, join us on the Ravens Talk Podcast. Welcome back to the Ravens Talk Podcast. Have a guest, very special guest, former first-round draft pick in 2005, Mark Clayton, who is the third all-time receiver in receiving yards, only behind Derek Mason and Torrey Smith. Welcome to the podcast, man.
What's up, man? Appreciate you having me.
It's a pleasure, man, to have you in here. Definitely had to get you on the show because you're one of the few people on earth who know what these players are going through. It's cut day. Unfortunately, for a lot of players, it's their NFL dreams are dashed, at least for the moment. You were a first-round draft pick, so it wasn't quite the same for you, I don't think, as far as those fringe players, but kind of walk us through how that first time being in that situation was for you, as far as being a first-round draft pick, going through your first NFL camp, and having to go through cuts.
Man, it was, it was interesting because, you're as a first-round draft pick, you kind of look like you're going to be there. Mm-hmm. But there's this fire to outperform any and everybody. Like, you still are. You got something to prove. You got this chip on your shoulder and all that. So it was like, I know I'm gonna be here, but I'm trying to go to the Pro Bowl this year still. Right. But then to have guys that in the meeting room that you've kind of connected with throughout camp and engaged with, and maybe some guys helped you along the way too. To know that those guys weren't going to be there at that first team meeting on Wednesday morning was kind of different. I mean, obviously way different from college. Everybody's going to be there, just not everybody's going to play. This was somebody was not going to have a job, here in the next week. And so definitely an introduction to the business of football, and it was just like, dang, man, that's wild. And then, on to the business,
Exactly. And you came from Oklahoma. You're one of the prominent players that played there. We have players now with the Ravens, 2 of them, in fact, are first-round draft picks. And if you really think about it, 5 total first-round draft picks, if you count Laquan Treadwell, who recently reported that he's going to be in the practice squad. So definitely different for you. Coming into the league, you went to the Baltimore Ravens, who were definitely a run-first team. The most of the league hadn't really catched up to the idea of the pro style of offense that was in college football. Talk about how you feel seeing this new style of offense make its way into the National Football League. Do you ever get that itch like, man, if I was just drafted around this time, boy, my numbers would be through the roof because man, you were definitely known as a route runner, and then your ability was definitely speaking for itself. But sheesh, to be in this type of offense, how does that make out for you?
No, I wouldn't be human if I didn't think about that.
I'm sure.
It's fun to watch. I'll say that. I'm fortunate to have kind of been on the fringe, coming out of high school where we were 3 and 4 wides, and we would call the play from the line of scrimmage. And so we're one of the few that did that in 1998, 99, 2000. And then getting to Oklahoma where Mike Leach had just left, but that offense was, still Summer Leach, and then Mark Mangino put his touch on it, and then Chuck Long took over and put his touch on it. But we still have some of that air raid where I was fortunate to be able to do what I do in that offense. And then get to Baltimore was like, man, I'm going through. I learned that playbook like that, but it was like I knew it, and it was like for me, I'm like, this is it. There got to be more.
Nope.
But, since it was such a run dominant, run heavy team, it wasn't a ton of passing concepts. It was fairly simple. And I was just like, oh man, we got to add this. Like, coach, can we put this in? Like all this stuff. But it worked for the team, and so it was fun to be a part of the organization, and I was happy that they did feature me when they featured me. But at the end of the day, yes, God, to be in a passing offense would be, I mean, that'd be like a birthday, every week.
I think about that a lot because there was a time when you were teamed up with Derek Mason, another guy with a similar skill set, I should say. But I feel like your athletic ability even outshined him a little bit in the regard where I've seen you make huge jump plays for the ball, a couple of end-around plays throughout your career. We have a similar situation now where Odell Beckham Jr. is in, and he's kind of put Zay Flowers under his wing. He looks like a puppy almost. Just follow him everywhere he goes. Talk about how having a veteran like Derek Mason helped you along in your career, and do you see similar success for Zay Flowers as it pertains to Odell Beckham?
Yeah, I think having OBJ in the locker room is going to help Zay transition that much faster, just from a mental perspective, just how to be a pro, not only in the building but outside of the building, being able to and handling fame. Like if there's anybody that can teach and give some knowledge as to handling fame, is that guy. And with Zay having him as a big bro, that's awesome for us. In addition to the fact that I feel like all these pieces are there because I think they want to throw the ball a little more. I think Mike coming in is another indicator towards, hey, let's open this thing up a little bit more, which I love, obviously. And I think Lamar plays his best when the field spread and stretched, and it creates a lot more, run lanes, not only in the run game, but for him as a passer and so on and so forth. But I'm excited at the fact that there is an OBJ, there is and our locker room. I mean, we're still fairly young, at receiver. So those are big moves.
Yeah. You played with a lot of quarterbacks in your time in Baltimore. You played a little with Kyle Bowler. Then we had a spell where we had the late Steve McNair join us. And that's really when your stats jumped up. I mean, I think you almost eclipsed 1,000 yards and had about 5 or 6 touchdowns that year. Talk about the difference between having a proven veteran quarterback like Lamar Jackson as opposed to being a rookie receiver and maybe having a rookie quarterback or maybe your run-of-the-mill journeyman quarterback under the helm.
Oh man, it's night and day. Just somebody who's been to more battles and succeeded in them. The poise that you get, just being able to be in the middle of the fire and have somebody calm the storm, so to speak, or was monumental. I mean, rip to Steve, but God, that was my favorite guy to just to have as a quarterback, but he was a great teammate. He was a good dude. But to have him on the field and be in the midst of different games, and all games are different. Every scenario is different. There's so many things that can go wrong and that do go wrong, and that you have to overcome. And one of the things I absolutely love about sport and football in particular, a play can just go to shit, and then it doesn't even matter because the very next play can be a career-long reception or whatever it is. But the mentality that you have to be in the midst of failure and then continue to step up and execute and be on the same page with everybody and mentally be present, because everybody needs you. Your team needs you to make the next play. Steve was that, as a leader. It was always what was next. Nothing really got to him. And you look at a lot of the really good young quarterbacks today, and a lot of the thing that is consistent between them is kind of this level-headedness and this we're going to win. We're down 21. It doesn't matter. We're down 20. We'll figure it out and we're going to win. And I got y'all.
Yeah.
And Steve was that. And so it was a blessing to be able to play.
Yeah, Steve was definitely a pain for Ravens fans when he was at Tennessee for many years. And then he came into Baltimore. It was like, we forgive you. It was crazy. It was a crazy year. And I remember you guys, I think prior to Lamar Jackson, you guys had the highest record ever for the Baltimore Ravens. I think you guys went 14-2 or 13-3. One of those two. I think 13-3. Yeah. So you guys were rocking on all cylinders. And I think Steve McNair is a big part of that. Well, one more thing. Well, not one more. I have a couple of things for you, but my last official football question has to deal with Lamar Jackson. And you kind of alluded to it already, but the change of the guard, going from Greg Roman's system, I know you fully appreciate the fact that they made that change to Todd Monken. Do you see this being the final kind of nail in the coffin for them to make that push to be a conference champion, to be a Super Bowl champion?
I do. Our last Super Bowl, there was a change of the guard that happened mid-season,
Mm-hmm.
And I was always like, looking at that, even when Joe was younger, I was a huge fan of, hey, Joe's smart. Like, he can do this. Like, let him take over. Let him throw that thing. Let him make his mistakes. Plus, have you seen our defense? Like, like whatever. And so to see Joe have the opportunity to be up under Caldwell, where they open the offense up a little bit, let him throw the ball down the field, let him take chances, let him just kind of grow into, his own kind of eliteness, and then us to go on and win the Super Bowl. That was awesome to see. And so I feel similar about this situation. I feel like there's so much upside to Lamar. He has not been given the opportunity to fail as a passer.
Right.
I'm like, man, you need to, in order to grow, he has to be put out there. He has to be allowed to actually slang the ball. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like they're going to, give him that opportunity. And I think that's going to change, not only the way we kind of see him and then the way media kind of paints the picture of him and talk about all this potential, all this upside, where we're not able to see it because this scheme is kind of, holding them down, holding them back. But now I think we're going to be able to see truly what Lamar has, in his wheelhouse, which I think is going to be exciting.
Yeah, and you're going to gain a lot of support from Ravens fans who feel exactly the same way. They're very excited about this upcoming season. I think you hit the nail on the head. He needed that chance to kind of prove that he could be a passer and only a passer and maybe use his legs more as a secondary option. But he did it in Louisville, and the way Todd Monken has his system set up, it looks like he's going to be able to do it again in the NFL. All right, before I let you go, I know I told you about this game already, but I love this game. I'm going to go ahead and do a random team generator. You're going to try and build a 17-0 perfect NFL squad. Your guys went 13-3 in 2006, and you're going to get a chance to pick one current player from each team that I tell you about and try and build that perfect squad. All right, so you ready to go?
All right. So when you give me a team, I just have to pick a position on the list. I can only pick one player from that team.
Only one player from that team. So you get quarterback, running back, 2 wide receivers, a tight end, defense, and coach. All right. I'm rooting for you. Let's do this.
All
right. First team, it's going to be the Green Bay Packers. Whew.
Green Bay Packers. I'm taking Aaron Jones.
Aaron Jones? All right, that's a good decision. I like that.
I think he's the best player on that team right now.
Very phenomenal. All right, good one. Jacksonville Jaguars.
I am taking I love T. Lawrence, but I'm going to go with I'm going to go with the receiver.
Calvin Ridley?
He just got traded there.
Oh, yeah, Calvin Ridley. That's a good choice.
Yeah.
Save that quarterback spot. You might get a good one. Oh, might not.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly.
All right. Oh, this is a good one. Well, actually not. Indianapolis Colts. You just use your running back, so you can't take JT.
Technically, I could have took.
Exactly.
So, where are we at? Quarterback, receiver, running back, receiver, tight end.
Uh-huh.
What else?
You got defense, you got coach, and I'll let you use O-line too, just because I got one more spot here.
Okay, coach and O-line. Well, if that's the case, I'm Indianapolis. I'll take their offensive line.
Okay, yeah. I think that's the best bet. I think that's your best bet.
Yeah, that's tough. Yeah.
All right. Next one, Los Angeles Rams.
Aaron Donald is, but their whole as a whole is not what that is. So I'm gonna have to go with the Cooper. This is tough. So it's between the coach and Cooper.
Oh yeah, there's Sean McVay.
Basically, yeah. So
you haven't used the receiver yet, but Sean McVay is actually a really good choice.
I got Ridley.
Oh yeah, you got Ridley. That's right. Oh, maybe you want to save that. Ooh.
But I'm saying I'm waiting on another one. So I'll go with coach.
Yeah,
I like him.
Good call. I would have done the same. All right, next choice, Tennessee Titans. What's their quarterback? Oh, yeah. They have a decent defense, I think.
That's what I think I'm gonna have to go with. Yeah.
Defense. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Here we go. We have the Baltimore Ravens.
Okay. I'm gonna take quarterback.
Smart decision, Lamar Jackson. The fans would be on you if you didn't pick Lamar Jackson. All right. Next one coming up. You're not gonna use that same team again, so we're gonna go ahead and try this again. Another same team? Wow, generator, you're doing a great job. All right, New Orleans Saints.
I would have took their defense over Tennessee defense.
Yeah. Too late now.
So I got tight end left. All right, let's go with
technically T.O.
Olive.
Oh, nice. All right, this last team has to have a great tight end. Let's see who we get. We got nope, can't pick them because you've already picked them.
Oh, Chiefs.
Kansas City Chiefs. Kansas City Chiefs. I swear to you. That's crazy. Oh, my God. They kept picking the Saints over and over again and the freaking Colts. And I was like, I'm not going to do the same team twice.
Yeah.
All right, Kansas City Chiefs.
Say it, do I?
Yeah, that's 17-0 right there. So you got Lamar Jackson. Who's your running back again? Aaron Jones. Chris Olave. Who's the other receiver? Ridley.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, your defense. You're set. That's 17-0. I did not see it coming because I thought once you had picked the Colts, you were in trouble, but you figured it out. All right, good job, Mark. Appreciate you having you on here. You've been a great guest. And before I let you go, is there anything you want to promote or talk about as far as businesses are concerned?
Yeah, man. I have a headphone coming out here shortly. So I designed it actually when I was going into retirement. Mm-hmm. So there was no active over-ear headphones designed for active lifestyle. And so I designed one and named it Live, L-I-V-V.
Oh, that's nice. Is it so over the air, kind of like how my headphones are, the Beats headphones? So if you're working out or running or stuff like that, it's like sweat resistant and everything like that? And
movable ear pads, so secure. And so I had problems with my headphones moving, so I wanted something secure. But then obviously I didn't want them to get wet, and so I needed water resistant. So they're water resistant. The ear pads are removable because we sweat like crazy, and so you can change those out and get new ones. But the design is what sets it off. It looks like a headphone from the future. It's
nice.
It's patented as well. So
awesome.
Excited to let it go. I'll send it for them.
I'll look forward to seeing it. I'll definitely post it online for the Ravens fans to see. I'm definitely going to get me some because when I work out, I hate my headphones being all sweaty and I take it out and it's falling everywhere. So yeah, good stuff for sure. Well, thank you so much, Mark Clayton, first round draft pick, one of the legends and receiver for the Ravens, one of the few great receivers that came out from the NFL draft for the Baltimore Ravens. So appreciate you having you on and definitely try to get you back soon, very soon.
Sure, man. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, brother. Have a good evening.
You too, man. Appreciate it. That's Mark Clayton with the Baltimore Ravens first round draft pick joining us on the Ravens Talk podcast. We'll be back in a moment. All right, that was Mark Clayton, former first-round draft pick for the Baltimore Ravens. A pleasure to be on. He definitely went 17-0, something I didn't think was possible with that generator. So kudos to him and kudos to the Ravens fans who got to appreciate one of the former greats coming onto the show and speaking to us. That'll do it for us here at Ravens Talk Podcast. Before I let you go, I want to let you know that we are doing a giveaway. We're going to give away 2 free tickets to the home opener for the Baltimore Ravens against the Houston Texans. Just follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, any of those social media outlets, and we'll give you more information. It's been a pleasure. Next week, the season starts. We're going to be talking all about Ravens football as we get ready to take on the Houston Texans. It's been a pleasure. I'm your host, Samuel Njoku. I'll see you next week.